I'm just going to throw this in here several times because this is my dream. I've got this dream. I have a dream because BVD doesn't matter. We need to get rid of it. My dream is to see every group of Australian replacement heifers screened for immunity to pesty prior to mating. So let me explain that a bit more. What I would like to see is every producer in Australia to say to themselves before they mate their heifers, God dang, I wonder if these girls are immune to BVD. Now, there's a reason why I want to ask that question. Two reasons. One, if they're not immune to BVD, what does that tell me about those girls? Well, it tells me that they are going to spend the rest of their life either being pregnant or trying to get pregnant. And if they meet a PI in the future, from then on, it's going to have negative consequences. They're either going to lose their conceptus, produce a PI, or even if it's right prior to mating, there's some ovarian dysfunction, interferes with good cyclicity, good production of an oocyte. Regardless, it's going to be a bad thing. Now, arguably, it's a bad thing anytime. Even before that time, if they get exposed as a calf, what have you, it could reduce weaning weights, more scours, et cetera, et cetera. There's lots of different consequences of BVD, which we'll get to. Regardless, at that point, they're going to go on to, for the rest of their professional life, producing babies. And if they don't have immunity at that point, I want to know that. Now, the other side of the coin, the other thing I want to know is, if you got a population of heifers there, let's say there's 100, let's say there's 200, let's say there's 500, doesn't matter. Let's say there's 10, doesn't really matter. I want to know if they're immune because that's a really, really easy and sensitive, meaning it works very well, it's a very accurate way of saying, are any of you ladies a PI? Because if they've all lived together as a group, and if let's say little Cletus Weena over here is a PI, then Cletus Weena is going to meet all these other ladies in that time if they live together long enough. So instead of going around and saying, are you Cletus Weena? We can say to any of those girls, have you ever met Cletus Weena? And if they've been together long enough and enough of them say, yes, I've met her, then we know that A, they're already immune. They don't need vaccinated. B, there could be a PI there. So that's the value proposition that I talk about. I'd love to see every producer blood test their heifers prior to mating, give themselves enough time to implement their intervention, ask them, a proportion of them, 5%, are you immune to BVD? And if they say yes, then we say, right, you've all met a PI, or a high proportion of you met a PI. Let's Enoch you ladies so that we make sure we do not send a PI on to get mated, to potentially fall pregnant, to produce another PI, and then to be in that group when that group then goes on to be boxed with another group down the track. That's the big risk. If she's in that group already, they're immune. She's not a real threat to them, but she's a threat to every other manager group on the farm, and she's going to be a threat to the next crop of calves that come out of those heifers because they're born without immunity. They'll get a little bit from their mothers, but still, it's a suboptimal environment, and that's why we want to find her and get rid of her. The rest of the girls are immune, so look, we've had some consequences conceivably, but they don't need vaccine, they can move forward. Okay, conversely, if they're antibody negative, you say, right, this is a good thing. So what you're doing seems to be working pretty well. There could still be PIs, we'll cover that later. However, this group doesn't have immunity. So we don't want to box them willy-nilly. We don't want to, and we should consider vaccinating them.